spotlights shine them bright. Gonna have a grand new show tonight, with glitz and glam on the marquee, perhaps a Tony nominee. Stars beam brightly, see them glow, sell out nightly, SRO. It's time to applaud the Broadway Beat. Stars beam brightly, see them glow, in the footlights of a show. Life is sweet on the world's most famous street.
Tickets, please.
Take a seat.
Cue the band.
And have your feet to the rhythm of the Broadway Beat. The Broadway Beat. Broadway Beat.
Hello, I'm Richard Ridge, and welcome to Broadway Beat, our look at the very best of what the New York theater scene has to offer. This week we'll visit with the new production of Grease, which returned to New York this past summer at the Brooks Atkinson Theater. This Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey tuner remains one of the longest-running shows in Broadway history. We'll also catch up with Tony Award-winning playwright Terrence McNally and the two stars of his hilarious comedy, The Ritz, Rosie Perez and Kevin Chamberlain, before they open in the Roundabout Theater Company's production at Studio 54. But we start things off with 91-year-old Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Horton Foote, who returns to primary stages with the New York premiere of his play, Dividing the Estate. It's a human comedy about a family that must confront its past as it prepares for its future. It stars Elizabeth Ashley, Penny Fuller, Gerald McRaney, and Hallie Foote. Dividing the Estate is directed by Michael Wilson.
Have you and Brother been in cahoots over this Mary Jo? What are you talking about? He was begging Mama all morning about dividing the estate. Did you and Bob put that idea in his head?
Oh, nobody put an idea in my head, sister.
What is going to happen this time while this is going on? What will happen to his job managing the estate? What's going to happen to it when Mama dies? Well, it's Mama's intention he shall go on and managing it. At least that's what she always said to me.
Well, how's he going to do that when Mama dies and the estate is divided? He's certainly not going to manage my share, and I doubt if Louis will let him manage his.
The last time I talked to Mama, she wasn't ever going to divide the estate. She was thinking of putting the whole thing into a trust and having Son managing it. Weren't you, Mama?
That was one plan I had.
Well, seems to me like you've had one too many plans. Louis, I think we're having our birthright stolen right in front of our very eyes by Son and Lucille.
Are you crazy, all of you? I bring my fiancée here to be introduced to you, and she must think I live with a bunch of lunatics.
I will not sit here and let Bob and Mary Jo take your job away from you after you and your father have served this family so unselfishly all these years.
Let them take the job, Mama. I can always find something to do.
After all, he will always inherit your share of the money.
I don't want her share of the money. I don't want anybody's share of the money. That's all I've heard all my life is money, money, money.
Well, it just came out of lifetime of hearing about stories about dividing the estate and how they all were a variation of a theme. And I tried to find a way to crystallize those in the theatrical evening.
And why did you set the play in the 1980s?
That's when it took place. There was a downturn in the economy and things were happening. That's very truthful in the play.
You know, it's as relevant today as it was in the 80s.
It's unexpectedly so. I didn't think we would find it again. But here it is. They're foreclosing on houses from one end of the continent to the other.
You know, you're as popular today as you have ever been at 91 remarkable years. What is the secret to your productivity?
I have no secret. I just get up and go to work every morning.
Well, Louis is a bit of everything. He's certainly the family black sheep, and according to my brother, that was just typecasting. But he's like all of the characters that Mr. Foote writes about. He is multi-layered. He's very complex. And at first blush, all of his characters, all of his dialogue in the beginning of every play seems so sort of ordinary and common. And then by the end of the play, you realize that the whole point is there's no such thing as a common human being. We're all in our own way extraordinary, and we have extraordinary stories to tell, and that's the whole point.
My character is named Mary Jo, and she and her husband are in financial trouble. And it's very it takes place in 1987, but it's sort of reminiscent, it's very much today what's going on with people. That's what it feels like. It's almost like he was very prescient when he wrote this play. He understood. He didn't, of course, but all the problems that we're having. The only difference is the oil then was devalued. It was very low, and now oil prices are very high. But people were losing their homes, all kinds of things. So.
It's interesting because, like you said, it could have been written in the 20s. I know he said it in the 80s, and it could take place right now because we have a whole thing of this happening on Long Island right now with people being, foreclosure on their homes and everything else. Talk about your father is probably one of the top 3 greatest American playwrights of all time. Why do you think that is?
I think he has universal appeal. I think he resonates everywhere. And it was funny, the other night we had a talk back and somebody said that this play reminded them of the Cherry Orchard, which I thought was very interesting. And they sort of discussed we have an African-American character, a man in it, who ends up dying in the middle of the play. And of course in Chekhov, he dies at the end. But there are all these sort of similarities and this sort of crude person that comes in at the end, of our play, or to us, seems of a lower class. Just all these different things. So I think he has that kind of appeal, sort of like Chekhov has that kind of appeal. I've had people walk up to me from other countries and say, "That's my aunt," or "That's my mother," "That's my brother, sister, father." So yeah, they just relate to the people he writes about.
He fell over the field from exhaustion. He slaved every day for this family, and not even his family, but mine. And what thanks did he get for it? What thanks did poor Charlie ever get? An early death, that's all he ever got. And all they ever did was take advantage of your father's good nature.
No one's going to take advantage of me.
Well, Lucille is a long-suffering, decent older daughter who sort of holds the family together as she's fallen apart herself. It's I've gotten a couple of friends have said it's like their aunt so-and-so. She's very familiar. Well, everybody in the play is familiar. To every race and every ethnicity will relate to this play because it's every one of us. It's so human, isn't it? I mean, that's not just me, is it? I mean, don't you feel that way? Yeah.
You see all your family members up there.
Yes. The good ones and the bad ones. And the good ones are also bad and the bad ones are also good, yeah.
Well, but, I mean, being an old woman myself, I'm 68 and I'm playing a woman who is 82. And I get annoyed because whether it's film or television and off times in the theater, the only time we see old women, they're either sort of grotesque monstrosities or doddering fools. And to see an old woman who has lived this life and who is not benevolent, not grotesque, not a fool, I just love it. I mean, it's wonderful. It's one of the most rewarding parts I've ever done.
What was the rehearsal process like?
Oh, fast, furious. And because back in the old days, when you did plays that had like a story and had 13 principal actors, you had 6 or 8 weeks to rehearse them. We had, I think, 3.5 plus some text, It's brutal. What can I tell you? Brutal. But Horton Foote was there every day, sharp as a tack, rewrites notes right on the money. I mean, Horton rocks. What can I tell you?
First of all, you rarely see a play anymore that has 13 great roles in it. And even though the sizes of the roles vary, Gerald's role is bigger than Liz's, but even some of the smallest roles in the ensembles are very dimensioned. And I think what was really exciting was to have watched these 13 actors of various generations, young to the master actors that were in that room, really going after characters, and all of these actors at the top of their game, working with a playwright at the top of his game, and really challenging and pushing one another to find the greatest truth. And that was terribly exciting. And every day we would approach a scene, and it was never set in cement. It was always that we wanted to come back and find a deeper, more intensive truth of the scene. So it was continually evolving, and I think everyone came in with a tremendous amount of imagination and creativity.
And my daddy told me that his daddy told him you could buy land here for $1.50 an acre. Oh, people were just abandoning their plantations because they couldn't make a living on them without their slaves. But he saved his money and he bought as much land as he could, and that makes up our estate.
That's not what the boy told me in front of the class that day. He said my great-grandfather stole everything we have. He says he was elected to a county office at the courthouse.
Yeah, well, county clerk.
You see, she remembers everything.
And he stole land right and left by destroying legal records in the courthouse.
Which is not true, of course.
And his boy said, I bet you have a blue belly just like your Yankee great-grandfather.
Great-great-grandfather.
Well, I never knew that before. Who did he steal the land from?
Oh, he did not steal the land. He did not steal anything.
Well, let's just change the subject.
Four-time Tony Award-winning playwright Terrence McNally is back on Broadway with his hilarious comedy, The Ritz, which is going to open at Studio 54. We caught up with him and his two stars, Rosie Perez and Kevin Chamberlain, during a break in rehearsal for this Roundabout Theater Company production.
Want some whiskey in your water, sugar in your tea? What's all this crazy question they're asking me? This is the craziest party that could ever be. Don't turn on the lights, cause I don't wanna see. Mama told me not to come. Mama told me not to come. That is the way that it was.
Well, the main things I remember about the play was how hard it was to get it right. Farce takes the fine-tuning, the precision of a Swiss watch. And we went to Washington, thank God, because we needed some time in front of an audience to work some of the kinks out. We played 3 weeks at the National Theater there. This was so long ago, 32 years ago, the show still went out of town. And thank God, and the biggest change we made in Washington, we added the little prologue, which made such a difference. Because I realized audiences didn't know why that character, the Jack Weston character, was in the bathhouse. So that little prologue, which I wrote in probably 5 minutes, made a huge difference. And this is why you go about plays are living creatures that you get right in front of an audience. You can rehearse till you're blue in the face in the rehearsal room, but until you bring the audience in, you still don't know what you have. Are you communicating? And no one ever said, you know, no one's going to know what he's doing there. Looks like a play about a man who's running from the mafia. But why is that funny? That's scary. Oh, so we did that. And the set was Battleship Gray in Washington. And someone said, you know, the curtain goes up and it looks like you're looking at the size of a Navy destroyer. Gray, that Battleship Gray, is not a fun color. It's rather chilly. So we repainted it red, and you'd think I'd turned into the funniest man in the world overnight. Between the prologue and the red, suddenly the play got 500 times funnier.
Well, there's a slapstick element to farce, and there are a couple elements. You always have to have the doors. You always have to have mistaken identity, and then a lot of physical comedy. At one point, Rosie Perez, Brooks Ashmanskis, and myself all are hiding under a twin-size bed. Now, as you can see, I'm not a very small man, so it gets very intimate and very sweaty. That's fun.
Now, talk about working with Joe Mantello, your director.
In 2000, I was doing a play called Dirty Blonde on Broadway, and Joe Mantello came to see it. And afterwards, he came backstage and he said, I want to do The Ritz with you and Rosie Perez. And that was 7 years ago. And he remembered. And a slot opened in his very busy schedule from putting in productions of Wicked all over the world. We're very lucky to find a slot to do this, and it's just been a laugh riot every 8 hours a day of laughing hysterically, and we're surrounded by lots of beautiful people in towels.
It is very rare. First of all, this set is fabulous. It's very phallic. Did he tell you that? It's very phallic. Can I say that? I just did. But it's exciting because it brings opening night closer to you. You know what I mean? It brings it so much closer to you, and then you feel like you have such an advantage because you get to work out things, and you're not like rushing to get comfortable with your surroundings. You know, and it's so good that we all, like, if I'm not doing a scene and Kevin's and Brooks are doing a scene, we sit and stay and watch. You know, we're so supportive, but not only, I don't know if everyone else is being supportive, because I'm not. I'm just sitting there because they're so damn funny. You know, they're entertaining me. So yeah, it's been great, and it's really smart to rehearse on the stage. Really, really smart.
Now talk about Guli, because now you've gotten into her. Give me your take on her.
Now that I've gotten into her, she is a woman with the best intentions, the purest heart, and the fiercest, most blind ambition you will ever see on a person. She wants to be a Broadway star, and in her mind and in her heart, she is a Broadway star. It's just that nobody knows it yet. And what she does at the Gay Bathhouse, she's the headliner, nightclub act, she takes it very seriously. She takes it and that's where the comedy comes through, because she's 100 in her mind, a consummate professional, and she's so bad. Poor thing.
Grease, which is one of the most popular and successful musicals of all time, has returned to Broadway this past summer at the Brooks Atkinson Theater. This Jim Jacobs and Warren Casey tuner about everyone's favorite teens from Rydell High remains one of Broadway's longest-running shows. The film version, of course, starred John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John as Danny and Sandy. Now, for this new production of Grease, which is directed and choreographed by two-time Tony Award winner Kathleen Marshall, it was America who chose who was going to be Broadway's newest Danny and Sandy when they voted on the weekly TV series Grease, You're the One That I Want. Over 90 million viewers tuned in over 12 weeks and chose Laura Osnes and Max Crum. We've got them and the rest of the cast of Grease right here.
Oh, well, you know, Warren Casey, my late partner, and I don't think we knew we had a hit for probably the first year almost of it, you know, because it was always, you know, the critics weren't negative to it originally, but they weren't rave reviews either. It really grew as a word-of-mouth show. So, I mean, we were asked for maybe the first 6 months of the show, can you waive your royalties? We're hanging by a thread. We need to advertise more. And Warren and I both felt that when the show left the Eden Theater to move up to the Broadhurst, which was like in around May of '72, and we had opened on Valentine's Day. I swear I thought the show was going to close. I said, that's it. It's not a Broadway show. And the Broadhurst is a very elegant theater with the white and gold. And I said, you know, this belongs in the Bowery or down on 2nd Avenue, you know. So finally, after about a year, when they said we're going to cast a national touring company, I suddenly started to breathe a little easier and said, hey, I think it's a hit show and it's going to, And then the original producers had an enormous fight with the Tony Committee, if you remember this. I mean, we got like 7 or 8 Tony nominations, but it raised a question of what made you eligible for a Tony Award. Was it the size of your theater or the geographic location? And it ended up it was the size of the theater, because we were in like a 1,200-seat house on 2nd Avenue and 12th Street, but we certainly weren't in Midtown, And everyone really kind of hated Grease among that elite Broadway theater league, which was the whole point of it originally, to do a Broadway show without the traditional Broadway kind of score. We wanted to do, my idea to Warren was, let's do a show with rock and roll songs instead of that legit sound of Broadway. And, and it was Warren's thing. Well, what would it be about? And he said, well, people I went to high school with in the late 50s and what they did and blah, blah, blah. So, but this is really nice, this production, because it really gets it back, takes it way, way back to the origins of the original. It's darker. It's got a darker edge. But, amazing to me, a lot of lines that people haven't laughed at in years, they laughed at tonight because she's paced it so the lines could be heard. And they're funny then, I was beginning to doubt our writing after all these years, but they still hold up. And we cut a lot for this production, too, so her dance could be brought out.
I got a call last June, it was kind of a crazy phone call, a year ago, saying, would you like to both direct and choreograph a new Broadway production of Grease and be on this TV show to find the 2 stars? And I was like, who is this? It was a little crazy. But I thought, if ever there was a show to try this with, experiment, it's this show, because it's so popular, and everybody knows who Danny and Sandy are, and also, it's a show about young people. You'd want to find fresh young talent. I mean, we've got 2, I don't remember the last time 2 21-year-olds played Danny and Sandy. So that was really great. And then I started exploring the show, and the first thing that gets me is the music. The music is so infectious. It's so smart. It has all this 50s pop vibe to it, but they're still smart theatrical songs at the same time. And then as you explore the relationships, and I think in the play, all the other characters are even more fleshed out than they are in the movie. And you really get this really wonderful simpatico relationship with all these characters. And I just found it this charming story of all these kind of young people kind of stumbling their way into adulthood and trying to find their way in the world and trying to find how to balance their friendships and their romantic relationships and school and how to become adults. And I just really fell in love with these characters.
Summer loving had me a blast.
Summer loving happened so fast.
Met a girl crazy for me.
Met a boy cute as can be.
Summer days drifting away to those summer nights.
Sandy is such an iconic role. I feel like I relate to the character so well. I'm a lot like Sandy in real life. And it just is amazing to be playing the role on Broadway and stand center stage just being hopelessly devoted every night is seriously a dream come true.
I learned that reality television auditions are torture. And I also learned that you got to just go out there, not care about the millions of people watching and the fact that it's live, and just perform for the audience and give people exactly what they want and make each performance count. That was it. I mean, and try not to get extremely overwhelmed and stressed out because it was so easy to. It was such a stressful time. It was a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So much fun, but it was hard, man. It was very hard.
We'll always be together. You know what I'm saying?
right.
Yeah, we'll always be together.
But just talk about what this was like making this film. This is like one of the top 5 best movie musicals of all time.
Wait a minute, excuse me. It is the top.
The top.
Okay.
But it was a labor of love. We worked for 15 weeks, and we all got along famously. There's no sordid stuff. It was just wonderful family gorgeousness.
We had a good time. We had
Great time.
and you could see this cast had a wonderful time
They
too.
did.
And it's infectious, and the audience loved it.
The music, the dancing, I mean, it will live universally forever.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's interesting. It was such a Chicago show. It was a really tough gang of girls. We wore razor blades in our hair. We came up through the audience. We stepped on people's hands. I mean, we were so tough. And when I was just starting the University of Chicago at the time, and I was asked to come to New York to audition, and I thought, it's such a Chicago show, it'll never make it on Broadway. And then when I saw it on Broadway, I went, why didn't I do it? And then I ended up doing the National Company. But every time there's an incarnation, something's gained, something's changed, something's lost, something, you know, is adjusted to the time period that you're doing the show and also to the surroundings. So it'll never be as tough as it was in Chicago, and I think it'll never be as innocent as it was on Broadway.
I have so many. Well, I shared my dressing room with Carol Demas, and I'm here with her tonight. First of all, my father saw it on the second night, thought it was a flop, thought it was just a real turkey. So and every day though it got better and it got better, and we had a lot of previews, so we really got to make it great. I had a song, and it was cut the first night. So
what was the song?
The song was called Yuck, YEEEECHH, and that just about describes the song.
Well, Vince Fontaine is an ambassador of rock and roll in the early days of rock and roll. And that's a big deal because rock and roll was outlaw music in those days. It was still, you know, the media didn't like it. And so it was, you know, you were hanging by the seat of your pants. There was always a chance that rock and roll was going to evaporate and disappear. Now we know rock and roll is forever, but in those days it wasn't the case. So Vince is a renegade, and he's one of the elders who got in on rock and roll in the early days, and he's leading the kids. He's a kook.
I love your...
Well, isn't that not unlike Spring Awakening? It's about that time in a human being's life when they're becoming aware of hormones and relationships and life and morals and friends and groups and the music is so wonderful. It's got a big backbeat, and that's exciting, and dancing, and it's just joyous. The only way for the people to enjoy it is to come see Drowsy Chaperone first, and then go see Grease, okay? It's simple.
You better shape up, 'cause I need a man.